Okay, so my name is Leighton. I'm sure we've met before. I am mostly delivering your lectures based on like global relations, but today's lecture is on Eastern European political blocs. Okay, and it speaks to what exactly is going on in the European context and not just Eastern Europe. That's just a disclaimer for you, right? The next slide speaks to which countries make up the Eastern Europe according to the United Nations definition, right? So these countries are parts of Eastern Europe according to the United Nations, right? It's Belarus, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Moldova, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Ukraine, and the Russian Federation, right? There are some 7 political areas that I believe you need to understand are specific to Europe in general, but more specifically the Eastern Europe political bloc and group of countries, as I'm going to discuss with you, right? Please pay special attention to what I'm going to say next, because these can be used as evidence during your argumentation, okay? So like take notes. So the first thing that we have here, sorry, give me a second. Yeah, right. The first thing that we have here is pluralism, right? So we see that European politics is characterized by like diverse political opinions and interests with many different parties and organizations competing for influence over that region. Okay, we look at examples like Poland, for example, who have or that has many different political parties represented in the country's parliament. For example, the Law and Justice Party, the Civic Platform, the Polish People's Party are just a few examples. And in like countries like Romania and Bulgaria, there's a strong tradition of political pluralism with many different parties and organizations competing for power. Okay. The majority of these countries are not like the United States politics where there's left wing, right wing. No. Their priority becomes like finding compromise between different political and social ideologies and perspectives. Okay. Which leads me to my next point on consensus based decision making. European politics emphasizes this type of decision making where everyone's interests and opinions are taken into account and they reach compromises. This is different to taking like a hard stance on a specific issue, but rather being malleable to wanting to come to like a resolutory, if that's a word, relationship between citizens and their government, even with regard to countries in the unions I'm going to discuss as well. Okay, in those political blocks. Multi-level governance is another example of these political areas. European politics is shared between different levels of government from local to the European Union level. Some examples of these include the Czech Republic and Slovenia, where there's a strong tradition of this consensus-based decision-making, where the different interests and opinions are taken to an account. Even like within the European Union itself, decision-making is often based on the principle of like consensus, with member states having this voice and equal say in the decisions that are made, right? This is reflected, as you would see and as you would know, in the use of majority voting in many areas of their policy, okay? That is basically when the minimum level of agreement is required in order for any decision to be made, but that's not really something you should concern yourself with for now, okay? Let's talk about multi-level governance for now, right? European politics is characterized by this multi-level governance where decision making is distributed amongst the different levels of government, okay? In countries like Romania, for example, multi-level governance is a key aspect of political decision-making, with local and regional authorities playing a significant role in the provision of public services and the implementation of national policies. Okay, we look at South Africa as well as another example of a distribution of power. However, we see that when power is held at a higher level, as opposed to sort of, in inverted commas, giving the citizens what they want through the local government, when power is held at that higher level of government, there's a greater level of practicality in everything that happens within likely, which allows for better outcomes, if I could say that, although both of them have their pros and cons. Okay, then assessing social welfare, right? We see that these Eastern political blocs are especially concerned with social welfare and public services such as healthcare and education, for example. Romania, again, we can look at it as an example, like what the country has well-developed welfare system that provides a range of social benefits to its citizens, including like access to healthcare, okay, and education. This is where we begin to differ from when I say we, South Africa, begin to differ from these European states, okay? Then when it comes to human rights and civil liberties, they have a strong emphasis on human rights and civil liberties, and there's strong legal and institutional mechanisms that are in place to protect these rights and the rights of the people, okay? Then the next thing, before we go through the next thing, in particular, the rights to freedom of expression, the right to fair trial, the right to privacy are among the most protected rights among Eastern European countries, right? Please remember that. The next thing is multinational relations. There are complex relationships between different countries and regions, with the European Union playing a key role in coordinating these relationships. Okay? Romania has a long history of close relations with its neighbors like Moldova and Ukraine, and there are often strong cultural, economic, and political ties between these countries. There are then, therefore, implications when it comes to issues such as different stances when it comes to making decisions in the political blocs that I'm going to speak to you about in a moment, okay? And these countries also focus on environmental protection, okay? European politics prioritizes this protection and sustainability and reducing carbon emissions to achieve the 2050 Sustainable Development Goals, carbon neutral. Yes. Slovenia has set a target of becoming carbon neutral by 2050, and the Czech Republic has made commitments to phase out coal-fired power plants and increase the amount of renewable energy sources such as wind and solar power. Okay. Right, so let's talk about a brief history. Okay, so the Eastern European political blocs emerged from the Cold War because the Cold War led to a lot of political instability, economic crises. Okay, what that meant is that the Eastern countries now wanted to seek out their prosperity, and the only way, or not the only way, but the most feasible way, was for them to join the European Union. Okay, and when that eventually did happen, if it did happen actually, this led to regional cooperation between these countries and then the further development of even more political blocs. Let's look at the European Union first. It's made up of 27 European countries, and it seeks to promote peace, stability, economic integration in Europe. Okay, it has like a complex system of institutions and regulations, including it having a parliament, it has a commission, and it has a court of justice. Right. In addition, the European Union is the world's largest trading bloc and accounts for over a quarter of global trade. Okay, but the European Union has been criticized for its bureaucratic and undemocratic nature because some people argue that it's too centralized and undemocratic. Okay, when it comes to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, now NATO is a military alliance of 30 European and North American countries that was established after World War II to facilitate a collective defense against the Soviet Union. Okay, NATO has since become partners with countries and has more countries, and has expanded to now seeking out security threats such as terrorism, such as warfare, right? That's where most of us were educated about NATO from, was the Russia-Ukraine war. Okay? Before we do that, NATO has been a key factor in maintaining peace and stability in Europe since it was created in the 1950s. Okay, NATO has also faced criticism for its involvement in conflicts such as the war in Afghanistan, for example. Okay, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, or OSCE, is the world's largest security-oriented intergovernmental organization and has 57 European and North American countries as its members. The OSCE's purpose now is to provide security, democracy, stability, and human rights in the Euro-Atlantic region. Okay? Say that again. Security, democracy, stability, and human rights in the Euro-Atlantic region. Okay, but we see that OSCE is a key platform for this dialogue and cooperation between the European and North American countries. However, it's faced criticism for its limited effectiveness. Okay, it's been unable to address some of the most pressing security concerns, such as Russia's aggression on Eastern Europe, for example. Okay? The next organization is the Council of Europe, right? The Council of Europe is a human rights organization that includes 46 member states with a focus on promoting democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. The Council of Europe is also responsible for the European Convention on Human Rights, right? However, just like the previous union that I've mentioned, the Council of Europe has been criticized for not being hard enough on authoritarian regimes in the region. Okay. Next is the Commonwealth of Independent States. Okay. The Commonwealth is a political and economic alliance of 9 former Soviet republics that includes... Right. It is an alliance between that, you don't need to know for now. Okay. Right. Next is the Commonwealth of Independent States, right? The Commonwealth is a political and economic alliance of 9 former Soviet republics that existed within the Soviet Union. Okay? It was established in 1991 in response to the collapse of the Soviet Union and aimed to now promote this regional stability and cooperation, specifically when it comes to the economy, security, and human rights. Okay. It has played an important role in ensuring there is integration of these former Soviet Union countries into other Eastern European political blocs. However, it's going to most definitely be controlled by the Russian Federation, because that is one of its member states, okay, and the most powerful of its member states at that. Next is the Visegrad Group, okay. It's a political and economic alliance of 4 Central European countries, that is the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. This was established in 1991 also, and it was aimed to promote regional stability and cooperation in the areas of the economy, security, and human rights. Now, very similar to the Commonwealth, okay? However, it's been criticized for being dominated by Hungary and Poland, and have faced accusations of backsliding on democratic standards, okay, and corruption. Next is the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation. The Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation is a regional organization created in 1992, but what's interesting about this organization is that it is an amalgamation of Central and Eastern European countries and Eastern and Southern Asian countries now. The goal of this organization was to promote stability in the Black Sea region through cooperation of not just economics, but also energy, transportation, and environmental protection, okay? It's played an important role in stability since the 1990s. However, this as well has been criticized for being controlled by the Russian Federation. Next, I just want to evaluate a little bit about why Britain decided to leave the European Union, because in order for us to understand Eastern European political blocs, we need to understand why it's a good thing and why it's a bad thing for us to be part of political blocs in the first place, and more specifically, ones associated with Europe, or those associated with Europe. Okay, so when it comes to national sovereignty, right, the people who supported Britain from exiting the European Union claimed that Britain's membership in the European Union limited the country's ability to make its own decisions and control within its own borders, and that leaving the European Union would allow Britain to reclaim its sovereignty as a nation. Okay, with regard to immigration, people who supported Britain exiting argued that Britain's membership in the European Union led to an increase in immigration from other European countries, which put pressure on the country's resources and created cultural and economic anxieties. The economic aspect, these supporters claimed that Britain's membership in the EU imposed too many economic regulations and obligations, and that the country would benefit from leaving the EU and being able to negotiate its own trade deals. And finally, political divisions. The vote was heavily divided among regional and political lines, with support for leaving the EU being the strongest in the rural and economically deprived areas, while support was the highest from urban and affluent areas. But we need to understand the converse as well, okay? We see that them leaving the European Union has had some negative economic implications, okay? Estimates are now suggesting that it has already reduced the UK's GDP by between 2% and 4%. Okay. The UK has experienced a decline in investment, exports, and industrial production, which has led to rising prices and reduced living standards for many Britons. It's also led to political chaos. Brexit has created significant political chaos and instability in the UK, with successive governments struggling to negotiate an orderly exit from the EU. The political divisions created by the Brexit vote, have also led to a period of political instability and a lack of clear leadership in the country, right? Obviously not to a level that we would associate our country at, but to a level that their country was not exposed to prior. When it comes to international reputational damage, it's damaged the UK's international reputation and standing, with many observers suggesting it has weakened the country's influence and credibility on the global stage. And it's reduced rights and freedoms apparent. Okay, this is not an absolute point, but it's reduced their rights and freedoms, including the ability to live, work, study in EU countries without visas and other restrictions. It's also caused confusion and uncertainty for many British citizens and businesses who are worried about the impact of Brexit on their lives and businesses. Okay, so this slide speaks to the application to debating. Okay, something that I need you to always remember is that no issue that any country is going to face is ever going to be clear-cut. Okay, there's always multi-dimensional forces that act on whatever issue, social, economic, environmental, whatever it might be. All of that will constitute the problem, and therefore the solution will not be as easy as it might seem in a debate. You will find that you can quite easily use that to your advantage, especially in a policy debate, because we see that if you get like a nasty motion that becomes a this house would motion about international relations, then opposition can always go up and argue that it's not as simple as it seems to solve this issue as the side prop is proposing, right? But that means that as side proposition, you need to know what is current status quo and what is holding them back from achieving what they aim to achieve in the first place. Okay, so pay special attention to what I've said about trade unions. Have a look at these motions, okay? And like read up on the concept behind these motions. For example, in the first one here, read up on the 2021 Belarus European Union border crisis. Like these are motions that I think would be very interesting to set. Right. Okay. Thank you so much for your time and have a good evening.